nations continue to treat Africa as a private domain, to the point where their parliamentarians, like the slavers of yesterday who decided on the fate of millions of Africans, now presume to legislate on the internal affairs of the sister country, the Republic of Niger. The Confederation condemns the pseudo-humanistic and neo-colonialist posture, which reflects a logic of mercantilist and imperialist exploitation of the continent. Indeed, there is a common thread between the slavery and transatlantic trade of the past and the terrorism plaguing the Sahel today, namely the enrichment of colonial and imperial powers on one side and the impoverishment and the fragmentation of Africa on the other. In the past, these powers built their economies by draining Africa of its human labor. Today's African natural resources are being plundered using strategies of terror and endless conflict.
Before we proceed with the speech, it is important to note that this is a statement delivered today by the representative of Burkina Faso, speaking on behalf of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, during the United Nations session addressing slavery as a crime against humanity. We now invite you to listen to the complete speech.
Excellence, Madame.
Your Excellency, Madam President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to deliver the statement on behalf of the member countries of the Confederation of States of Sahel, namely Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. On this day of commemoration of the abolition of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, the member countries of the Confederation bow with respect before the memory of all of the innocent people who suffered unjustly from these abhorrent acts. It is deeply regrettable that societies calling themselves civilized deemed it normal at a certain point in their history to systematically reduce other human beings to the status of things, to torture them, to sell them, to deprive them of all dignity, and to deny them their humanity. Today's ceremony must not be limited to simply honoring the memory of the more than 10 million Africans who were deported and enslaved in inhumane and degrading conditions. It must also serve as an opportunity for us to identify the responsibility for the harm done to Africa and to humanity as a whole, and to affirm a strong collective commitment to act for justice so that such atrocities never happen again. Madam President, on this subject, some states prefer silence and prefer to suffocate the truth about these macabre events. At the time when a series of measures are brought into being to recall and commemorate other human tragedies, sometimes of far lesser magnitude, the Confederation of Sahel States believes, on the contrary, that the truth must be brought to light and the reparations must be pursued. And the current context calls for this as certain nations continue to treat Africa as a private domain, to the point where their parliamentarians, like the slavers of yesterday who decided on the fate of millions of Africans, now presume to legislate on the internal affairs of the sister country, the Republic of Niger. The Confederation condemns the pseudo-humanistic and neo-colonialist posture, which reflects a logic of mercantilist and imperialist exploitation of the continent. Indeed, there is a common thread between the slavery and transatlantic trade of the past and the terrorism plaguing the Sahel today, namely the enrichment of colonial and imperial powers on one side and the impoverishment and the fragmentation of Africa on the other. In the past, these powers built their economies by draining Africa of its human labor. Today's African natural resources are being plundered using strategies of terror and endless conflict, and this is done through terrorist mercenaries and other criminal armed groups that are financed and instrumentalized. Madam President, faced with the reflexes of these slave trading and imperialist states that refuse to accept the emancipation of the peoples of the Sahel and of Africa, the Confederation of Sahel States remains committed to supporting any initiative aimed at restoring the dignity of African peoples, including through reparations. We therefore welcome and fully support the initiative of the African Union to adopt a resolution which categorizes slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. We also take this opportunity to thank Ghana for so eloquently voicing the continent's position on this question, and we express our deep gratitude to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of Ghana. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Burkina Faso on behalf of the Confederation of States Sahel.
I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I thank the President of the General Assembly for convening this important meeting. My delegation aligns itself with a statement delivered by Ghana on behalf of the Africa Group. Ethiopia joins the international community in solemn remembrance of millions of African men, women, and children who were subjected to the horrors of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. This day stands as a reminder of the gravest crime against humanity and historical injustices. The tragedy of slavery stripped generations of their humanity. The transatlantic slave trade and the colonialism represent two of history's most extensive crimes against humanity, leaving legacies that continue to adversely influence Africa's contemporary socio-economic landscape and development trajectory. Slavery, apart from its cruel extractive nature, it disrupted social systems and fundamentally reconfigured economies, governance structures, and cultural institutions across Africa and beyond. As we reflect on this painful chapter, we underscore the importance of education, truth-telling, and the preservation of historical memory. We are of the view that acknowledging this gravest crime against humanity is crucial for honoring the victims and also for compensating with reparation for the atrocities committed. Addressing the structural and historical roots of inequality, including the socio-economic consequences that continue to affect people of Africa and African descent particularly, is important. Commemoration, therefore, must go beyond retrospective remembrance. It must serve as a call to confront the living consequences with courage. In the same vein, Ethiopia commends the leadership of Ghana on behalf of the Africa Group for successfully tabling the draft resolution declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. In conclusion, we pay tribute to the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, and also to those courageous abolitionists who fought to stop such atrocities. We hope this day would serve as a first step to renew our collective determination to rectifying the damage and build a world founded on the inherent dignity of all humanity. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ethiopia. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Guinea.